Hello guys, in this video I am going to talk about the cargo sample management in a oil and chemical tanker, and especially I will be focusing on cargo sample disposal. So without wasting time, let's get into the video. All we need to know about oil and chemical tanker vessel cargo sampling, retention of the sample and disposal of the sample. We can focus on the disposal of the cargo sample. So regarding the disposal of cargo sample, very first thing a chief officer of a oil chemical tanker should keep in mind that disposal of cargo sample must be in accordance with the Marpol requirements. So you are not allowed to bypass any Marpol regulation, even regarding the cargo sample as well. So there are two options basically. Now let us check option 1. Option 1 says delivered to a shore reception facility. It means you can hand over or you can dispose the cargo sample to the shore facility. Option B, added into tank washing. It means when you do the tank washing or tank cleaning operation, then you can add into the washing water depending upon the compliance with other factors. Further to keep in mind for option a certificate of receipt to be kept as part of evidence in case of shore disposal. It means you have to keep a disposal record. Option A is the only one option for cargo samples which are require pre-wash. So in the case of cargoes that require pre-wash, you are not allowed to dispose directly to the sea. Only one option is option A, and that is delivered to shore facility. Okay, the next one it says further to keep in mind for option B. What it says, we may mix sample with the tank washings of compatible cargoes. In the case of Annex 2, you cannot exceed the total quantity that is maximum allowable as per P&A manual. Every chemical tanker have this P&A manual, that is procedure and arrangement manual, where this is mentioned that quantity cannot be exceeded for the case of sample disposal. So if we go through a P&A manual, we will be able to see the limits. Right now we can see a P&A manual stripping limits example. Next one, it says quantity should never exceed the total quantity as permitted by the regulations for efficient stripping. As the P&A manual is complying the Annex 2 regulations basically, so this will never be exceed. Okay, for inhibitor cargoes there is a temperature limits, so we cannot exceed the temperature, and usually this is ambient temperature. It can be like around 35 degree maximum. The final message from this part is samples relating to a cargo claim may only be handed over to a representative of P&I club after getting a receipt for the same. For the purpose of the negotiation and the case study, you have to hand over the sample to the authorized personnel only, and in that case you have to get the guidelines from the owner or the management office, and you have to keep the receipt as well if you handed over any sample to any authority. Now we will be going through all other topics one by one. If we start from this part, sampling of the cargo, and I will be discussing at the same time once I read. First one is sampling of the cargo. A complete sampling program consists of number 1, it says sample from shore tank line, then the manifold sample. The next one, sample from ship's line and or pump stack if it is necessary, from the ship's line and or pump stack. Then the next one, first foot sample, then sample from completed tank, that means after loading. Then it says unless a very good documented sample log is kept by the vessel, have no real value as evidence in legal actions. Then the next one, how many samples are taken depends on the conditions in the charter party and the type of cargo. It is depend upon the charter party condition and the type of cargo. Then the next one, PPE as per hazards of cargo during sampling, refer to MSDS and PPE matrix. It has to be complied with. Next one, clean and suitable sampling equipment is required for the sampling. Then column J of chapter 17 of IBC code gives advice on the type of gauging permitted. To decide open sampling or closed sampling, we have to refer to chapter 17, and under column J we will find the recommended sampling procedure. Either it is open sampling or closed sampling for the particular cargo. Then the next one, depressurize the intended cargo tanks through PV valve in case of open sampling. So in case of open sampling, if the tank is pressurized, then keep the PV valve open for certain time to depressurize the tank first if it is pressurized. The next one, draw manifold sample during start of loading with manifold valve closed. Repeat this sampling each time short tank is changed. So keep the manifold valve closed and take the sample, then open the manifold valve once you are satisfied with the sample. The next one, draw samples from each discharging tank and a manifold sample using inner manifold drain for visual check. So before discharging, keep the manifold closed, take the sample from the inner part, that means from the ship's line. If it is needed for the purpose of the surveyor, you can hand over to surveyor as well. Then the next one, clear and transparent glass bottles to help for visual examination of samples. Next one, it says dark glass bottles for those cargoes which are sensitive to light. There are certain cargoes which are sensitive to the light. For those cargoes, you have to maintain the dark glass, and this is basically for the chemical cargoes, exceptional chemicals. Then the final one in this part, it says sampling should not take place until 30 minutes after loading has been completed to ensure any static charges have been dissipated. In case of static accumulator cargo, you should wait for 30 minutes at least to dissipate the static electricity. Then the next topic, how to do close sampling. So first thing it says, you shall do close sampling by using an approved close sampler through a vapor lock system. So approved close sampler is of course having a vapor lock system. And then the next one, it says drawing a sample at the pump stack by recirculating the cargo through the pump. If you are not using that sampler, then in that case you can do the sampling through the pump stack by recirculating the cargo through the pump. It is simple. You have to keep the discharge valve closed. So if you run the cargo pump, the cargo will come, and as it is pressurized, you can take it. It is having the connector that is suitable for the cargo pump. So that's how you can do the close sampling as well. But in that case, you have to take it in the bottle very carefully. Then the next one, checking of samples. Once samples are drawn, ship staff shall make following simple checks on them. Observe general physical appearance. It is milky or hazy, etc. The next one, observe its color and brightness. Next one, look for any presence of water. Last one, look for other physical impurities visible to the eye. So physically you can see if any impurities is floating around. Then it says we should not start loading if there are concerns regarding sampling. You should ask to the proper authority before resuming the cargo loading. So before resuming the cargo loading, you have to be ensured that this is completely fine. Okay, then the next one, required labels on sample. The labels of the cargo sample must at least contain the following information: name of the vessel, port of loading, cargo name, tank or the particular location, then the date and time, signature, voice number of chief officer, and where possible take signature from the surveyor as well. There is a note for you: always accompany surveyor during sampling by the surveyor. So when the surveyor taking the sample, there should have a vessel's representative who can monitor what he is actually taking and how he is taking, intentional, so that intentionally he cannot change anything. Next one, LOP to be issued on the below cases. Here is a reminder to issue the LOP in some cases regarding the sampling. If the load port samples are not provided by the surveyor, then the next one, ship and shore joint sampling is not carried out. Then the next one, surveyors refuse to sign samples taken by ship's crew. The last one, if terminal does not allow manifold sampling. I remember in the Al Jubail, they don't allow manifold sampling to take from the ship's side. So there may have restrictions in several other ports as well. So in those cases, you can issue a LOP, that is letter of protest, to the terminal or to the concerned authority. Then the next one is storage of cargo sample. We'll be going through this part. What it says, all samples that remain on board are to be properly stored in the sample locker. A list of all samples stored to be maintained. The storage space should be made of materials fully resistant to the different chemicals intended to be stored and to be cell divided in order to avoid shifting of the bottles at sea. That means your sample locker has to be comply with this requirement. First one condition, it says that has to be made of material, and that material also to be resistant to the different chemicals, okay, for the cargo that this vessel may carry. Then it says incompatible cargo samples to be stored separately following a cargo compatibility chart as per 46 CFR. It means you have to follow the compatibility chart for the case of cargo sample as well. Then it says it is prohibited to store chemical or oil samples even for brief periods in rooms or lockers not intended for this purpose. So it clearly mentioned that you cannot keep the sample bottle anywhere else in the ship. Like many times we keep it in the CCR for short time. This is completely prohibited. In general, samples can be disposed of 12 months. This is in general guidelines, but it depends basically upon the company procedure anyway. After discharge of the cargo, considering Hog-Bisbee rules, business and law part, however, it depends upon the company procedure. You can follow the SMS of your company and keep the sample on board at least up to the stipulated time mentioned in the SMS. Again, in some cases, you may need to keep it longer, like in situation where there is a cargo claim. If there is a cargo claim, then you cannot dispose that cargo sample unless your company is particularly guide you for doing so, or there are special instructions from charterers or commercial operators to maintain a longer retention period. So if there is particular intention from the charterer or owner for the particular cargo, then you have to keep the sample in the sample locker accordingly. Some exceptions. Samples of inhibited cargoes should not be stored on board for a period more than validity of the inhibitor certificate. Inhibitor is such a thing that keeps the cargo quality or maintain the cargo quality, and every inhibitor has a particular validity. Once the cargo is loaded, then actually inhibitor is added. So you should maintain or you should keep the cargo sample for that particular cargo up to the validity of the inhibitor. Otherwise, the cargo may self-react as per the cargo characteristics, and you may have some other issues for that cargo. So that is very clear guidelines here. Samples must be monitored daily in order to check stable conditions of the cargo samples for the case of inhibitor cargo. If any change in the conditions is observed, the vessel must follow the requirements listed in the inhibitor certificate and contact the vessel control group immediately. Other one, it says propylene oxide like PO mixtures and acrylic acid samples due to their hazardous nature must not be stored on board. So there are certain cargoes you should not keep on board for the particular characteristics of the cargo. In my time, I never got the opportunity to carry all these cargoes, so I don't know much about this. Let's talk about the next topic. We have already covered this disposal of the cargo sample, so we can go to the next one, line flushing. Lines are usually checked for its cleanliness. In this manner, cargo is started first with the tank drop valve shut and sample drawn from the drain cock immediately at the valve. A sample should also be taken at the manifold drain cock to ensure the shoreline itself is not contaminated. It is guiding us to take the sample from two different parts. One is from shoreline till the manifold, and from the manifold to the ship's tank. Before ship's tank delivery point or drop line from the pump side, you can take this sample. For the case of shoreline, you can take the sample from the manifold. For some cargoes, we need the circulation. For this case, of course, loading master and surveyor will guide you. For certain cargoes, it may require thorough flushing of all individual loading line with cargo prior fast food analysis to obtain sample at pump stack for lab analysis. Adequate number of empty plastic drums should be kept ready at each pump stack to collect the line flushing. That means cargo that will come in the line will be flushed to the drum or somewhere else so that the line can be flushed thoroughly. Drums used for collecting line flashing should be cleaned appropriately, dried, and marked to avoid mixing cargoes or chemicals that are incompatible. Very dangerous reactions with emissions of toxic cargoes fume can result when cargoes or chemicals that are incompatible are mixed. Okay, this is common guidelines, and I have experienced for this type of case, like to load monoethylene glycol MEG. This chemical is a sensitive one, and we used to flush the line to a drum, like cutting drum, and we used to keep the drum close to those tanks. Let's now dive into the last topic. Chief officer shall ensure the sample locker is made of a non-flammable material fully resistant to the cargo. Yes, for the case of chemical tanker, it is mandatory, made of a non-flammable material and fully resistant to the cargo. Divided into shelves and cells to segregate incompatible samples and prevent shifting of samples at sea. Should be divided into shelves, as it says, and that and at the same time these divided shelves should be made of such material that is fully resistant to the cargo that the vessel intend to carry. Of course, it has to be non-flammable material. Then it says fitted with a fixed firefighting system, so that compartment must have a fixed firefighting system. And usually what I found in my cases, all the sample lockers I have found with the fixed sprinkler system. It can work as a firefighting medium. Then the next one, it says adequately ventilated. Yes, it is also a requirement. The outlet of the ventilation must be fitted with flame arrestors. And in my cases, as I remember, all the ships I have found the mechanical ventilation as well. So that's it. So this is how I can continue various lessons that is required for our tanker operations. And I hope you are enjoying my classes. Don't forget to share with others, please. Hope to meet you in next video with some other topic. Thank you once again. Don't forget to visit www.sailor360.net website. That is only for you.